this lesson, we're going to learn how to factor trinomials. There's two different forms we're going to look at, or ways of factoring. The first way of factoring we're going to look at is where our trinomial, or a here, is a 1. And just to kind of review, you always check before you factor, always check for a GCF. Sometimes you might have a polynomial with a GCF. If it has a GCF, you need to factor the GCF. But to factor a trinomial that is in this form, x squared plus bx plus c, where your coefficient of x squared is 1, we're going to unfoil to determine what our product is. So keep in mind, factoring is just breaking the polynomial down into multiplication. So what types of polynomials were multiplied to result in a trinomial in this form? Well, it's usually two binomials. So what we're going to do is look at breaking this down. So if we're thinking about unfolding, all right, I knew that x squared, first times first, to get x squared, we had to multiply x times x. I know to get the last times last, we have to multiply two numbers to get 6. Well, 6 times 1 and 3 times 2 both will multiply to give us 6. But which of the two will, I'll go by this sign here, will add to equal the middle term here of 7? Well, if we notice, if we add 6 and 1 is 7, 3 and 2 would be 5, so our numbers we're going to use are going to be 6 and 1. Since we're adding is same sign, so in order to come out positive, a positive 7, they both have to be plus and plus. You can always check whenever you factor, you can check these by folding it back out and see if it matches. Our second example here, we're going to factor again. All right, we know that the first times first breaks into x times x. Our last times last can either be 9 times 1, 3 times 3. So I want to know which of the two will add to equal -10. Now remember what we said about adding. We have to have same sign. Well, I know 9 and 1 is 10, so to get -10, I know they both have to be negative. Just to check it, just think, what is -9 times a -1? Well, it's +9. And what is -9 minus 1? Well, it's -10. Our third example, we're going to factor again. All right, first times first is x and x. The last times last, 4 times 2, 8 times 1 are our options. But this time, we want them to subtract, all right, to equal -2. So when we subtract, remember, they're going to be different signs, okay? So I know that one sign is positive, one is negative. Which combination would subtract to 2? Well, I know 4 and 2 we can get to when we subtract, but to get a -2, our larger number has to be negative. So I'm going to put 4 with the negative and 2 with the positive. Pull it back out, you can see that 2 times -4 is -8. And then if you did the inner and the outer and you combine those, you're going to get a -2. All right, our last example here, just unfolding. First times first is x times x. All right, so 70 has quite a few combinations, so let's just list them. So we know 70 and 1, we have 10 and 7. Of course, right there I can tell that that's going to be my numbers, but just to keep listing, 35 times 2 and 5 times 14, I believe, are just, I think, all of our factors that we can have on that one. So of the combinations, which will subtract to equal this middle term, 3? Well, we notice that this is our combination here. When we're subtracting, 1 is positive, 1 is negative. So in order to get a positive 3, our larger number has to be positive. So we're going to put 10 with the plus, and then 7 will be with the negative. All right, what if we have trinomial, but this time the leading coefficient is not 1, it's something other than 1. All right, so we're going to, we use what this is called bottoms up. And we're going to use if the leading coefficient is a number greater than 1. So we're talking about this number here. All the 4 that we just did all had 1s in front. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this leading coefficient by the constant, which is your C, whatever that number is, to make the leading coefficient 1. Then we'll factor by unfolding like we just did in the previous examples. Once we factor, then we're going to bring this A back by dividing the second term in each binomial by the leading coefficient. We'll reduce each fraction. If a fraction remains, we'll bring it from the denominator up, which is how we get the name bottoms up. So our first example, so notice here, we're going to take this leading coefficient, we're going to multiply it to the constant, and we're going to get a new trinomial. So I'm going to make the leading term x squared, I'm bringing the middle term down, and I'm going to make the constant negative 24. We can factor this new trinomial into x times x. So what will multiply to 24? So let's just kind of list, try to get away from listing and just in your mind figuring out what multiplies to get the last times last. So we've got all of our combinations. So remember, since it's a minus, I'm looking for these numbers to subtract. Remember, it's different signs. So which is going to subtract to get negative 2? That's going to be 6 and 4. Larger number gets whatever the sign of this number is. So 6 will be negative, 4 will be positive. But we have to continue here because we got rid of the 3 here. We're going to bring it back. So we're going to write in 3 under each number. Reduce your fraction if you can. Well, 4 over 3 will not reduce, so this is where we get bottoms up. So we're going to move that bottom number 3 in front of our variable, and we're going to write, there's one of our factors, and then we can reduce 6 over 3 to get a negative 2. So these are easy to check by pulling it back out. If you are uncertain, pull it out, and you should get what we started with here. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply 3 to the 20. We're going to get us a new trinomial. So we're going to factor this new trinomial into x times x. Now 60 has a lot of factors. I'm going to list them: 60 and 1, 10 and 6, 5 and 12, 2 and 30, 20 and 3, 15 and 4. So what combination, remember your sign, we want them to add to it equal the middle term, which is 19. So of these, it's going to be this last combination. Since we're adding, remember, same sign. Since this 19 is positive, they're both going to be positive. So we're going to put 15 and 4. It doesn't matter which factor comes first because multiplication is commutative. So we're going to now divide by 3. We can reduce 15 over 3, and we're going to bottoms up that 3 in front of the x. And there we have our factors. All right, so we're going to multiply again, 9 times 25. We're going to have y squared minus 34y plus 225. So 225, I'll just list some possibilities here that will give us 225. So we're looking for the combination that's going to add to get negative 34. So that combination is going to be 25 and 9. So to get the sign negative, remember it is the same sign, so they're both going to be negative. Now we're going to divide by 9. Remember, that's this number we got rid of. All right, 25 over 9 will not reduce, so bottoms up. And then 9 divided by 9 is 1. All right, our last example here. We're going to bottoms up, so I'm going to multiply that 5 to this negative 2. All right, we're going to, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to rewrite a new trinomial, and we're going to factor it. So let's do this one without listing our numbers. We know it's going to be x times x. So what two numbers will multiply to 10 and subtract to get this negative 9? Well, it's going to be 10 and 1. Since it's, I know I've got a positive and a negative because it's a minus here, different signs. So to get negative 10 has to be negative, 1 will be positive. Remember this 5, bring it back. And then bottoms up if it will not reduce. So this one will break down into, that should be, let me just rewrite that. That's 5x plus 1 and